Hello, so today I'm going to talk about the fish in the tank. And the first question that anyone who comes here and sees the tank asks is there only plants in the tank, there's no fish? And well, there's a really long explanation for that. In fact, this tank has 15 fish. 15, yes, I think I did the math well. But, well, at most what you see when you look at the tank is, well, if you're lucky you see the clownfish, because the clownfish are, there's always someone in the Magnifica. And because the clownfish are having trouble solving their relationship, sometimes even the clownfish are not immediately visible. So this is first thing of all a clownfish tank, and I think it will always be, although there are many other fish here inside. The first memory I have of seeing a saltwater tank was when I was a kid, and I remember seeing, I think it was 2 clownfish in an anemone. It was the first thing I saw in terms of saltwater fish in a tank. And I don't know if it's because of that or not, but ever since, for me, a saltwater tank without a clownfish doesn't make much sense. And so they were also my first saltwater fish. It was clownfish. And much later, when of course I started having tanks again, but I always wanted to keep away from saltwater tanks because I always thought they were extremely complicated. And that changed one time when I was participating at a trade fair, and right next to me was a small tank, maybe something like 30 centimeters, no, sorry, 50 centimeters long, that had a cinnamon clownfish, some live rock, a pump, a heater, and a light, a T8 light, and just 2 or 3 corals. And I talked to the guy that owned the tank, and the tank had been running like that for a few years. And I was amazed that, in fact, a saltwater tank could be as simple to maintain as that. Just live rock, water pump, heater, and light. It seemed even simpler than a freshwater tank. And so that's how I began also with the saltwater tank, was mimicking that setup. And one of the things I'm most proud of in keeping fish tanks is that I managed to stay, I think, almost 2 years with just a couple of clownfish in the tank. And every time I went to a fish store, I managed to resist the temptation to get another fish, which in saltwater is extremely difficult. Well, but nowadays, well, what you have here I think is a bit strange, because normally when you look at an aquarium you see fish, especially in a tank like this that already has 15 fish. But how come you can't see almost any fish? Normally, if you look at first sight, you can see the clownfish. Then if you look a bit longer, you can start seeing one, then another and another. Well, I selected the fish for this tank according to a few strict parameters. One of which is that any fish in this tank can't remind me that this is a cage. Of course, animals are inside a limited space, but any animal that swims back and forth constantly, that is big swimmers, they remind me constantly that they are in prison, they are in a cage. So I prefer fish that in fact like to stay in very small areas. So clownfish are a perfect start. And what other fish are inside? Well, I have diamond goby, And the reason I got the diamond goby was because, first of all, I wanted someone to help me to keep the sand clean and constantly mess with the sand. And it does that job amazingly. Some people say that they are difficult to keep, and I believe that, but not in this case. This diamond goby, he began to eat everything that I put in the tank. He eats flakes foods, pellets, frozen food, anything he can get, he eats since the first day. And that is one of the big problems with diamond gobies, is that sometimes they depend constantly on whatever they can get out of the sandbed. Well, beyond the... Well, you can see right back there one of my dream fish, which is a flame angel. I managed to get, when I got the Magnifica, I managed to get a small flame angel, which, looking at it, I could be sure it was a female. And so, very quickly after, I got another bigger one, which, although still, I think it's still a female at this point. But because there's a big size difference, I'm pretty sure the bigger one is becoming a male. So, I have 3 clowns, diamond goby, my 2 dream fish, which are the flame angels, and then continuing on sort of utilitarian fish, I have a mated filefish here, and the reason I got it was to help me control the aptasias in the tank. And although in the first weeks I didn't notice anything, and if I tell you the truth, I never saw him eat any aptasia. The fact is that it's very difficult now to find aptasias in this tank, to the point that I now let aptasias live almost freely in the refugium, so that there is a constant aptasia supply to the tank. This is a bit strange, but that is what I do. Because filefish are considered reef safe with caution. And this guy ate 2 species of zinnias that I had in the tank. He doesn't like the pom-pom zinnias, but the other 2 zinnias that I had here, he liked them and he cleaned them up. And I saw him eat the zinnias. And I know that he can also get some taste for the zoanthids, and that's something I really don't want to happen. So I want to keep him entertained. So that's the reason I feed the tank at 5 times a day, and also keep a supply of aptasias from the refugium. Well, more fish. Then at that point I remember I was already noticing that I could hardly ever see fish swimming in the tank. So I thought maybe I need some dither fish that help the others feel safe. So I ordered 5 threadfin cardinals. Unfortunately, 2 of them were dead on arrival, so I only have 3. But those 3 threadfin cardinals also stay in the back. They normally don't come to the front unless they're eating. So more recently, I also got a couple of Banggai cardinals, which were a fish that I already had some years ago. I had a couple and I managed to breed them. And it was very interesting to breed them, and they are the cutest fish when they are babies. They are complete replicas of their parents. But the thing is that when you have a couple, the female is constantly harassing the male to persuade him to take her eggs. And the poor guy is constantly taking eggs. So he incubates the eggs in his mouth, and then he releases the fry. And sometimes just after 3 or 4 days, he has eggs in his mouth again. So he's getting weaker and weaker because he doesn't have time to gather some fat again, because during the whole time that he's carrying the babies in his mouth, he doesn't eat. And so that's also a hard thing to do. But I went to the fish store to pick up Threadin maxima, and I saw 4 Banggai cardinals, and I noticed that they were hanging in the tank 2 by 2. And so, well, I didn't risk. I was thinking about getting more threadfin cardinals, but then I thought, well, maybe it's a good idea to get more diversity. These guys are also quiet, and I remembered one thing, that the Banggai cardinals sort of get along with anemones. And that's what happened. As soon as I released the Banggais here in the tank, and I'm sure they are captive bred, they immediately took to the BTAs, to the bubble tip anemones. And they normally hang around the bubble tip anemones, and I've seen them really touch the anemones. Let's see if I don't forget. Well, I was also curious about tanks, but tanks in principle should be out according to my criteria of not wanting fish that make this tank look like a cage. And fish can make this tank look like a cage in 2 ways. One, the first I said before, by swimming all over the place, and second, by being big. A big fish will make any tank look small. If you put a whale shark inside the biggest private aquarium in the world, it will make the tank look like a cage. And that's what happened in all the public aquariums that have whale sharks. And in many private aquariums that have tanks. So tanks like big ones are of course impossible. This tank only has 90 centimeters of length, and it's 90 centimeters by 90 centimeters. But then I started reading about 2 tanks from the genus Ctenocaetus that don't grow that big, and especially the Tomini tank, they don't tend to swim all over the place. So what I have here also a Tomini tank, and he only comes out to eat. Other than that, it doesn't come out very much. I also have 2 very interesting fish, 2 yellow assessors. Those fish are interesting. Once again, I acquired 3. 1 was dead on arrival, so now I only have 2 in the tank. They swim most of the time inverted, upside down. They follow the surfaces they're swimming along. And all these fish hang mostly in a cave behind the anemones. There's a big cave behind, and that's the spot that they all hang without much problem among them. Let's see if I'm forgetting anyone. I don't think so. So it's 3 clownfish, 3 threadfin cardinals, 2 Banggai cardinals, 2 flame angels, 1 diamond goby, 1 mated filefish, 1 Tomini tang, and 2 yellow assessors. So I have these 15 guys in this tank, and sometimes you see someone coming out of the cave of the anemones and going around. Well, to tell you the truth, whenever I see the fish all outside, and that happens very rarely, I don't like that much the look of the tank. I think it's too many fish. But as they are, this tank seems to have lots of space. Because with 15 fish, well, one sometimes gets out, and it becomes also an interesting tank to watch and just to find the fish, because the fish are not very evident in the tank. That being said, these days I'm not so sure if the fish are happy living this way, spending most of their time in a cave. I don't think they're scared, because when there's food they come out and they're not scared of me. I can move around and they don't run. But maybe one of the factors that is causing this behavior may be the fact that this is an anemone dominated tank. So most of the tank is a hostile environment for the fish. And maybe that's also one of the reasons why they don't come out more. Well, really, I don't know. The fact is that I also chose fish that, according to my criteria, they don't swim all over the place. They tend to live in relatively small areas. And well, I like it this way. It may seem a bit strange, but I like the tank as is, without the fish being in constant display. It makes the tank a bit more interesting for me, for me to watch, as well as for people that come here that raise their eyebrows as soon as I say that there is 15 fish here in the tank. Okay, in next video I will talk a bit more about the corals and the anemones. Thanks for watching.